into matters agriculture and chemicals, and how trusted are your chemicals, and do you feel that the chemicals we have are relevant enough in terms of our crops, especially in light of some of the diseases we've been seeing affecting our crops and bring up fears of threats on food security. Now, we will speak to the person, someone who actually is an authority in that would actually give us better direction. We are joined by Kuria Gatonye, the chairman of the Agrochemicals Association of Kenya, beg your pardon. First and foremost, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Yes. Now, just begin with, some people may think that the AAK is part of the Ministry of Agriculture. It's an arm of the ministry. And maybe set it straight. Is it really part of it, or are you an independent body?
Thank you, Dan. We are an independent body, actually. Agrochemicals Association of Kenya is entirely private, but that does happen often. The mistake that we belong to the ministry or we associated with the Ministry of Agriculture does happen because we work very, very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture, very, very closely.
Yeah. So what exactly is your mandate? What exactly is the role of AAK?
AAK, our mandate or our role, we would say, is crop protection. We are mainly involved in matters of crop protection to help the nation achieve food production. What we do in terms of crop protection is that we provide agrochemicals, like our name suggests. So we make sure that the farmers have the right quality of chemicals and they are available in the market at the right time.
And we've spoken about the quality, and what is there? Most industries, you find there's a problem with counterfeits. Be it in terms of technology and drugs and everything. How rampant is it in terms of the agrochemicals?
Thank you very much. Actually, Dan, we are just coming from the launching of the Anti-Counterfeit Agency strategic plan, where we are a member of the JCAC. JCAC is the Joint Committee Against Counterfeits. We are hit by counterfeits, I think, to an extent of about 20%. Our industry is roughly 8 billion industry, and if 20% of that one has been affected by counterfeits, that says a lot. What it is that we have made deliberate efforts to try and address this issue of counterfeits. One of is the one I've just referred to, being members of the Anti-Counterfeit Agency. The other, what we have also realized is that due to our efforts and our interventions, we have managed to bring down the incidences of counterfeits from about 20%. We are now talking about 12 to 10%. So that's a major milestone. The efforts are still continuing, and we are not taking that one for granted because we know the impact that counterfeits really have on the industry. This is not agrochemicals alone, but also other industries. But as an industry, we realize that we need to protect the farmer, and we also need to protect our business. Thank you.
And now the farmer will go probably to a store, to buy his chemicals, and he's trying to deal with, to make sure he can actually have that quality crop to be able to sell it at the best price. How will he tell, for instance, that this is something legitimate and this is a fake one? What is there that can help me tell the difference?
We have made very, very elaborate efforts to educate the farmer on what to look out for when they are looking for products. Just for your information, Dan, our budget, 50% of our budget is spent on training only. And we don't have a small budget. It's about 30 million Kenya shillings annually. So 50% of that goes to training. We are trying to educate the farmer on the responsible use of pesticides. How you ask a question, how can the farmer be able to identify the counterfeits? We are in the process of rolling out a very elaborate program jointly with the Pest Control Products Board to enable the farmer to identify counterfeits and immediately send an SMS number which we will allocate, and they are able to get information on whether a product is a counterfeit or it's not. Further to that, the labels that are on the products, we make them so elaborate, and the details, if the farmer keenly looks at the details, it's easy for them to identify counterfeits. Because one, the quality of the labels, and then secondly, individual members of the association make efforts to have say holograms or security marks on the labels.
And I'm just thinking, besides you, the government should also be doing its part in terms of helping with the counterfeits. Do you feel enough is being done, or is there quite some room for improvement?
We feel in the recent years, there have been a lot of efforts towards fighting counterfeits. Like I said, the formation of the anti-counterfeit agency has really boosted that war. And we feel that the government also, in terms of the agricultural sector, the PCPB, Pest Control Products Board, is working very, very hard. We are working very closely together, and we recognize the efforts that PCPB is taking towards elimination, or at least creating a lot of awareness to the farmers about counterfeits, and it's working.
Yes, and I think a month or so ago, or about within the past 2 months, we saw there was a certain, disease that was some people are calling it mysterious. It's both viral and fungal, I think, which was affecting maize. And with that kind of a situation, where you come in, maybe not provide the pesticides, for instance, or to help in the management of that. How manageable are such situations right now? Are we in a place where if we are hit by something like that again, we are going to actually be able to stand?
Yes, we are. We have the capacity as an industry to fight the diseases. But maybe just to shed a bit of light on the so-called mysterious disease. I think we were going through the stages of identification of the disease, and luckily the Ministry of Agriculture has now identified the disease. It's a maize leather necrolysis disease. So it's caused by a virus called maize MCMV, maize chlorotic motor virus, and it's a complex. There is also a fungus called Cerasmonium acremonium, which is also in the equation. So you realize that the identification of the disease has now been done, and therefore the control now becomes fairly easy. What we need to say is that as an industry, we are recommending that farmers should plant only certified seeds. They should not plant maize-saved seeds. We are also saying that farmers should treat the seed. We have appropriate chemicals to treat the seed, and therefore farmers should take that initiative, make sure that their seeds are treated. We are also advising farmers to continuously scout for vectors that may be spreading the virus that is causing the disease, the MCMV that I've just referred to. So we are telling farmers, please also practice good agricultural practices. And then we are saying we have a lot of information now, luckily, about the disease. So farmers can call on the Ministry of Agriculture, or at least Agrochemicals of Association of Kenya, to help at least with information and on how to fight the disease.
All right, and you talked about your budget is pretty big, about 30 million shillings a year. Where your funding, is it a challenge first of all to find that funding, or where do you get your funding from?
Well, our funding is internally generated, I would say, because we get a percentage from all the imports that members are doing. We get a certain percentage from that imports as our revenue. We are also working jointly as an industry internationally with CropLife Kenya, international. CropLife International is headquartered in Brussels. They are the international agrochemical industry, and jointly we work together, and that also occasionally is another source of our funding. But mainly the bigger percentage of our funding comes from our members.
Mr. Gatonye, if I may, our market in terms of agrochemicals, first of all, these chemicals, are they locally produced or are they imported?
Most of our agrochemicals are mainly imported. We don't have the capacity yet to do local production. We do it on a small scale, particularly for pyrethrum-based products, but the majority of the products are imported.
Is it a matter of funding or know-how in terms of that makes us, unable to be able to make these chemicals ourselves?
Actually, it's funding, but let me say that we have the expertise, but the funding is quite an issue. But it's important to understand that it's not cheap to develop some of these molecules, because particularly the R&D aspect is very, very expensive. Most of our members are multinationals, and they have very elaborate R&D departments. And from their experience, we are aware that it takes quite a hefty sum of money to develop these products. But our aim in the future and our hope is that we will be able to build capacity, and our members, individual members of the association, will be able to develop these products locally. Otherwise, for now, it's quite expensive.
Oh, so that remains somewhat a challenge.
Yes, it
So,
is.
do you have anything like a timeline where we are saying hopefully in the next say X number of years we should be producing our own chemicals? Do you have anything like a timeline that you're working with, or right now it's
We wouldn't say that we have an exact timeline, but maybe just to shed some light. In the budget, the minister said that funds are going to be available to a number of local industry to eventually be able to produce fertilizer locally. So maybe that's a step in the right direction. So we could start with the fertilizer and then eventually go out to chemicals. So there are deliberate efforts to enable the local industry to be able to produce chemicals locally, and we welcome that one.
all right? Now you've mentioned the budget, which is one of the things that is really being debated, from almost every direction.
Yes.
As regards now where you stand, as AAK, did you feel that the budget, favored you, or did you feel that more would have been done towards, boosting your end of the coin?
Okay, thank you. With our consideration or our reaction to the budget is that, like I said, we are not per se a government body, but we work very, very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture. So really what happens to the Ministry of Agriculture in terms of the budget is our concern. And we are aware that the minister has increased the funding to the Ministry of Agriculture from 33 billion to 53 billion, which is quite good, an increase of about 20 billion. And we are also aware that he has set aside about 1.5 billion to enable farmers pay their debts of inputs, which they have been struggling to do. So we welcome that kind of a move in appreciation of the fact that according to the economic survey of 2012, agriculture contributes about 24%. In 2011, we contributed, agriculture contributed 24% to the GDP. That is up from 21% in 2010, which is quite an improvement. So the fact that we are contributing up to 24% to the GDP really makes us concerned with the funding that is being allocated by the Ministry of Finance to the Ministry of Agriculture, because we are aware that about 8 billion also is going to fund irrigation with a specific emphasis on drip irrigation. So all these efforts towards supporting agriculture, they are very welcome to us, because it also helps us in our interventions when we are trying to, when the farmer grow their crop, or when they are producing their livestock, which is also an area that concerns us, like both livestock and crop. We are at hand all the time to support them in terms of crop protection and in terms of enabling them to improve and increase production, so that we can able to not only maintain that 24% of the GDP, but help them improve it.
All right, so it's a good budget, but you feel, many people in the agricultural circles, so to speak, were feeling that they have in a way been shortchanged. They were hoping to get more. Actually, the other day there were some farmers, cereal farmers from the Rift Valley, who were saying how they were hoping to get more money. They even had suggestions of how much more the government should have allocated to them, as well as in terms of the waivers. Yeah. So are you also feeling that more should have been put towards agriculture?
Yes, Dan. Certainly, all the time we know that, like I have just said, that agriculture contributes a lot to the GDP, and therefore, and it is also a source of livelihood for a lot of people in the country. So any move towards improving the funding for agriculture is most welcome. The government has set aside about 1.5 billion for strategic food reserves, and maybe that's where the farmers are feeling more money should have been allocated, because eventually that money goes to buying the food reserves from the farmers. Maybe they are feeling more money should have been set aside. But coming back again to your question, is that you look at the budget, it's a 1.4 trillion budget, and then the allocation for the Ministry of Agriculture is 53 billion. Then in that aspect, you would feel like you would want more funding towards agriculture, because it's quite key.
Because with a lot of reference to the Maputo Declaration, where member states are meant to give at least 10% of their budget to agriculture. Now, maybe just in closing, maybe you might tell us, in terms of these crop diseases, which crops are the most prone, generally, and just basically that, which crops are the most prone to diseases, can actually now have an effect of threatening our food security?
Basically, all crops are prone to diseases. It's actually a question of how do you manage the disease. And like the maize leather necrosis disease, it has become very prominent because it's a very new disease. So really we had to fight very, very hard because the extent of the disease was large and little was known about the control measures for the disease. So particularly this one has been highlighted, the maize, because we all know that maize forms a very big percentage of the food source for our population. So if a disease affecting maize will obviously receive a lot of prominence. But even coffee, wheat, all the crops are prone to diseases. Luckily, so far we have managed to help the farmers in controlling the diseases. And we are also sure that even this new one of the maize disease, with the proper husbandry, will be able to contain the disease. So across the board, plants, crops, and even livestock, like I said, is also our mandate, are prone to diseases. But the way they are managed and the way they are fought really is what matters.
All right, thank you. I really admire how you can be able to memorize all the names of those chemicals. When I grow up, I'll be able to do that. Thank you very much, Kuria Gatonye, for joining us. At least now we have a better, view of Agrochemical Association of Kenya, and dispelling any misunderstanding whether you're part of the government or not.
Yeah.
You have something you wanted to add?
Yes, Dan. Maybe I would want to add about at the same time when the Minister for Finance was leading the budget, there was also in Parliament, he also tabled the value-added tax bill 2012, which is part of it is seeking to reintroduce the VAT on fertilizer, pesticides, basically inputs. And I think as an industry, we feel that would be a very, very wrong move. Previously, they have been zero-rated, and if that bill now seeks to reintroduce the VAT, it would be really overburdening the farmers. The farmer has just is recovering from the effects of very bad weather. You know how the fuel prices, the diesel prices have been. You also know how the prices of fertilizer have been. So really by reintroducing VAT, that would be adding to the burden on the farmer and also increasing the cost of production, which again will affect the food security situation. So we would, as an industry, really oppose or advise that that one be reconsidered.
All right. Excellent point to end the interview with Kuria Gatonye, the chairman of the Agricultural Association of Kenya, who's finished the show by telling us that he from where he sits, that he does not support the VAT bill, which is being debated.